The scandal began at exactly 9:15 on a Tuesday evening beneath the blazing chandeliers of Lady Peaton's ballroom, and everyone in London would swear they felt it before they understood it. The music was lively, the air warm with perfume and expectation, and yet something sharp cut through the room the moment the Duke of Blackvale stepped inside. Rachel Vesperine stood near the wall, almost invisible in her dove-gray gown. The silk blended so well with the pale walls that most guests looked straight past her. She was used to that now. Widowhood had taught her how to exist quietly, how to observe without being invited. From her place at the edge of the room, she watched the Duke enter with his usual calm stride. His dark coat was perfect, not a crease to be found. A single white rose rested in his lapel, the only softness in his severe appearance. The orchestra had just begun a dance when it happened. One by one, every unmarried young lady in the room found a reason to turn away. Fans snapped open to hide faces. Mothers suddenly remembered urgent instructions. Daughters drifted toward refreshment tables that did not need them. Shoes carried their wearers anywhere but toward the Duke. Rachel saw it clearly. She saw how the space around him widened as if he carried a chill. She heard the whispers sharpen. "Monstrous," Lady Selwyn hissed to a group of matrons, her voice meant to be soft but traveling far. "He refused my Clarissa last week." Said her conversation was ornamental. Can you imagine such cruelty? The Duke's face did not change. His blue eyes revealed nothing as he moved forward and found no one waiting. Rachel noticed the smallest tightening of his jaw. She noticed how his fingers shifted on the rosewood walking stick he carried, not to lean on, but to place something solid between himself and the room. The gossip papers would feast on this. Rachel could already hear the headlines forming in cruel ink. "The cruel Duke stands alone. Every lady refuses him at the Peaton ball." Lady Peaton herself approached him, her smile polished and empty. She spoke loudly enough for the room to hear. "Your Grace, you appear to be having difficulty securing a partner. Perhaps you might consider moderating your standards." The Duke did not raise his voice, yet it carried across the ballroom. "My standards are simple. I require substance beneath silks. If London's finest cannot meet that, I will dance alone." A collective gasp rippled through the guests. Mothers pulled daughters closer. Fans fluttered in alarm. The Duke stood in the center of the floor, dark and still, surrounded by retreating colors and pearls. Rachel felt something shift inside her. She did not step forward. That would have been foolish. She did not step back. That would have been dishonest. She stayed exactly where she was. When the Duke's gaze swept the room, it found her. Her gray eyes met his across the polished floor. She did not smile. She did not turn away. She simply observed, as she had learned to do during the long years since her husband's death, when grief had pushed her to the edges of other people's lives. His eyes lingered on her a moment longer than was proper. Something flickered there, quick and unreadable. Recognition, perhaps. One outsider noticing another. "Mrs. Vesperine," Lady Selwyn snapped, slicing the moment apart. "Surely even you would not be so desperate." Rachel adjusted the black mourning brooch at her throat, her voice calm. "I consider nothing, my lady. I only observe that true cruelty lies not in refusing empty gestures, but in demanding them where no real feeling exists." The room seemed to stop breathing. The Duke had already turned away when Rachel spoke again, softly but clearly. "The dances that matter are not beneath chandeliers, Your Grace. They are in quiet corridors, where duty speaks and few listen." Several guests froze mid-step. Slowly, the Duke turned back. For the first time that evening, surprise crossed his face. "An observant thought," he said, inclining his head. "Though I wonder if anyone here remembers duty at all." "Some of us never forgot," Rachel replied. The exchange lasted less than a minute, yet it struck the room like thunder. Rachel had not chased him. She had not flattered him. She had simply stayed. When Lady Peaton asked if he would dance alone as promised, the Duke straightened. "I believe I shall retire. London has made its feelings clear." He paused at the door, "Though I find myself curious about those who do not retreat when others do." The doors closed behind him, and the ballroom erupted in whispers. Rachel felt eyes burning into her back. She had broken no rule, yet she had broken them all. "You foolish woman," Lady Selwyn hissed as she passed. "Do you know what you've done?" Quote. Rachel touched her brooch again, a habit from darker days. "I have done nothing." But both women knew that was not true. 3 days later, Rachel sat in the morning room of Lady Ashworth's townhouse, where she worked as a companion. She read aloud from the scandal sheets while her employer listened with bright interest. "The Red Widow makes her move." Lady Ashworth read, delighted, "Stands like a beacon of impropriety while respectable ladies flee." Rachel poured tea with steady hands. "I merely stood still." A knock interrupted them. The butler entered with a silver tray and a single card. Lady Ashworth snatched it eagerly. "Merciful heavens," she said. "The Duke of Blackvale requests an audience. He is here now." Rachel's teacup rattled against its saucer. "That is impossible." "He is a duke," Lady Ashworth said. "Nothing is impossible." Rachel smoothed her lavender dress and walked to the drawing room with the calm she had learned through grief. The Duke stood by the window, tall and precise. He turned as she entered. "This is irregular," she said after her curtsy. "So was our last meeting," he replied. "I require someone with your qualities." "My ability to stand still," she said. "And to see," he added. "Tell me what you observed." Rachel answered honestly. "A man punished for honesty, and a room afraid of truth." He studied her. "You speak boldly." "I have nothing left to lose." He made her an offer, a temporary position at Blackvale, 1 week, a chance that would likely destroy what remained of her reputation. "When do you require me?" she asked. "Tomorrow at dawn." Rachel did not hesitate. Blackvale rose from the Yorkshire mist like a fortress. 12 hours after leaving London, Rachel stepped from the carriage and faced the great stone house. The Duke met her at the door. "Welcome," he said. Inside, the house was grand and tired. Dust lingered in corners. Servants avoided their master's eyes. Rachel noticed everything. "Your staff is afraid," she said gently. "Yes," he replied. "And your guests arrive tomorrow?" "Yes." Rachel removed her gloves. "Then we must begin now." The Duke looked at her, surprised. And for the first time in years, Blackvale began to wake. Rachel did not sleep that night. Blackvale breathed around her like a restless giant, every corridor echoing with unfinished work and unspoken fears. Before dawn, she had already walked the length of the house twice, memorizing doors, staircases, and the quiet rhythms of the staff. She understood quickly that the house was not broken by neglect alone. It was wounded by silence. By mid-morning, she had gathered the servants in the long dining hall usually reserved for lesser meals. Faces looked at her with caution, some with open fear. They had been ruled by uncertainty for too long. "We have less than 1 day," Rachel said simply. "Tomorrow, London arrives expecting failure. They will not find it." A young maid named Henrietta swallowed hard. "But we don't have a housekeeper, ma'am." "You have me," Rachel replied. "And you have each other." The Duke stood near the doorway, arms crossed, saying nothing. He watched as Rachel assigned tasks with quiet authority. Windows were opened. Fires were lit. Carpets were beaten. Forgotten rooms were aired out. She worked alongside them. Sleeves rolled, hands dusty, her presence steady. In the east wing, she discovered the source of the so-called ghost. A loose shutter banged against stone, casting strange shadows at night. It took 1 nail and 10 minutes to silence it. Fear vanished like smoke. In the kitchens, she learned the truth about the butler. Mr. Olstone was not stealing. He was hiding his sick son among the servants because he could not afford care. Rachel took this knowledge straight to the Duke. "He needs help, not punishment," she said plainly. The Duke listened, jaw tight. After a long pause, he nodded once, arranged treatment, immediately. Something shifted in the house after that. The staff began to look at their master differently. By afternoon, Rachel stepped into the conservatory and felt her heart sink. The orchids drooped in heavy silence, leaves dull, blossoms fading. She knelt, touched the soil, and knew at once. "The heating failed," she said later, finding the Duke in his study. "They are dying." His hand tightened on the desk. "Those orchids took 20 years to collect." "They can still be saved," she said, "but not without effort." That night, Blackvale did not sleep. Coal was hauled, pipes were repaired, soil was mixed by hand. Rachel moved through the glass cathedral of the conservatory, like someone restoring a wounded friend. The Duke worked beside her, jacket gone, sleeves rolled, his hands careful and sure. At one point their fingers brushed while lifting a delicate root. Neither spoke, but the moment stayed. "You know orchids," he said quietly. "My father did," she replied. "He taught me that beauty dies without care." The servants watched their master labor with soil on his hands, and something like loyalty took root. When dawn came, the orchids still looked weak but alive. The guests arrived at noon. Lady Selwyn was first, her eyes sharp, searching for disorder. She found none. The house gleamed. The staff moved with calm precision. Rachel stood at the entrance, composed, her gray gown simple but perfect. Dinner was the true test. Lady Selwyn struck over the fish course, her smile thin. "One might think you have found a miracle worker, Your Grace." Or perhaps an ambitious widow. Silence fell. Before the Duke could speak, a young voice rose. Edwin, his ward, lifted his glass. "Mrs. Vesperine worked until dawn to save the orchids. She worked harder than anyone in this room." Others murmured agreement. Rachel did not look at the Duke, but she felt his gaze on her, steady and full of something new. The week unfolded like a quiet victory. Conversations softened. Laughter returned to halls that had known only echoes. The orchids bloomed, fragile and proud. On the final night, the Duke found Rachel alone in the conservatory. "Stay," he said simply. She turned to him, heart pounding. "Ask me again when the guests are gone." He nodded. The last carriage left at sunrise. In the stillness that followed, the Duke stood before her once more. "Rachel," he said, no title between them. "Will you stay?" Quote. She looked at Blackvale, at the orchids, at the man who had learned to bend without breaking. And she did not answer yet. Rachel did not answer him at once. The house was quiet in a way she had never heard before. Blackvale no longer felt like a fortress holding its breath. It felt like a place waiting to be chosen. Morning light spilled through the tall windows of the conservatory, touching the orchids they had saved together. Their petals were open now, strong and alive, as if they understood what was being asked. "I need truth," Rachel said at last. Not promises made in relief or gratitude. Severin did not rush her. He stood still, as she once had in Lady Peaton's ballroom. "Then I will give you truth," he said. "I have lived behind armor for years. I told myself it was strength. You showed me it was fear." Rachel studied him carefully. This was not the cold Duke London whispered about. This was a man standing without protection. "If I stay," she said, "I will not be hidden. I will not perform. I will not become decoration for your title." "I would not survive that kind of lie again," Severin replied. "Nor would Blackvale." Rachel looked around the conservatory one last time. "Then yes," she said quietly. "I will stay." The decision spread through the house faster than any scandal ever had. Servants smiled openly. Mr. Oldstone wept without shame. Henrietta hugged Rachel before remembering herself and apologizing in a rush. Edwin grinned like a boy who had won a long battle. London, of course, reacted as expected. The papers sharpened their ink. The cruel Duke and the Red Widow. A dangerous alliance. A calculated move. A scandal waiting to collapse. Rachel read none of it. She was too busy rebuilding a house that had never known peace. Weeks turned into months. Rachel did not change Blackvale by force. She listened. She repaired. She opened windows that had been shut for years. She filled rooms with light and purpose. Severin watched, learned, and slowly joined her not as a ruler, but as a partner. He learned the names of every servant's child. He listened instead of dismissing. He spoke less, but meant more. And one quiet evening, as they walked the gardens beneath a pale sky, he stopped. "Marry me," he said simply, "not to save reputations, not to prove anything. Marry me because I cannot imagine this house or my life without you." Rachel looked at him, really looked. She saw the man who had been punished for honesty, the man who had stood alone because he would not pretend. She saw herself in him. "Yes," she said, "I will marry you." The wedding took place 6 months later. Black Veil's ballroom had never seen such light. Candles blazed against crystal. Silk and jewels filled the space, but something deeper held everyone's attention. Rachel stood beside Severin, no longer a widow, no longer invisible. She wore emerald green, not white, life, not mourning. "They are all watching," she whispered. "Let them," Severin replied. "For once, they are seeing truth." The music began. He led her into the dance with care, not control. London watched in stunned silence as the cruel Duke moved with grace, as the Red Widow smiled without fear. Later, Severin led her into the conservatory. There, among the blooming orchids, stood something new. Copper-colored flowers glowed in the candlelight. "They reminded me of you," he said. "Strong, unusual, impossible to ignore." Rachel touched one gently, tears blurring her vision. "You see me?" she whispered. "I always did," he replied. "I just did not know how to deserve you." When the night finally ended and Black Veil fell quiet under the stars, they walked together through the glass halls. "Do you regret staying?" Severin asked softly. Rachel smiled. "How could I regret finding home?" Outside, the world would continue to whisper. Titles would be debated. Names would be twisted. But inside Black Veil, orchids bloomed, laughter echoed, and two people who refused to run chose to stand together. Some things, Rachel had learned, were worth waiting for, and some men were worth staying for.